Welcome everybody to the marriage weekend. It's been great so far, I think. We're Stephen and Susan Adkins, and we're doing a class on communication, okay? The title was Communication Intimacy. You could have put any second word there. I think we would have given the same course. So I'm not sure how communication intimacy is different than marriage communication in marriage. The barcode there would allow you to get the digital version of this presentation, so you can follow along. Communication in marriage. Some attention needs to be paid to communication about what in marriage, doesn't it? And so the way that we start with all of our marriage type talks is we start with this basic premise. Okay, this is what we referred to as the marriage pyramid. It's how we look at answering the question, what is Christian marriage? Okay? In Christian marriage, it's distinct from worldly marriage in the sense that we acknowledge God's role and we understand that God has made the two into one. Mm-hmm. And so Christian marriage, what we usually think of as Christian marriage, is living that out. It's learning to live as one. Because while God made us spiritually one, somehow, some way, in the amazing way that God does, it takes some working at it to end up living that way. Am I right? To end up living as one. So Christian marriage, the simple answer that we would give is it's learning to live as one. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, what that means to us, and this is just our way of looking at it. Anyone who's lived marriage and tried to put it all into their mind one way or another may come up with a different diagram, okay? But this is the way we think of it, okay? We usually think of the three layers, but beneath the basement, down in the basement, the foundation beneath the foundation is being great disciples together. God's got to be the foundation. We know that. So being great disciples together is really the foundation beneath the foundation of Christian marriage. But then we think about Christian marriage as being great friends, great partners, and great lovers. Mm-hmm. And these are the things which make marriage great, unique, awesome. There are a lot of words out at the right that help put flesh on the bones, help elaborate or illustrate what we mean by the four layers. These are, in fact, topics of good communication. Yeah. Yes. So if you wonder, what is it we mean by being great partners? It's, there's ministry together, there's household stuff together, there's finances, there's children, there's careers and future, there's life and family plans, there's extended family. Why did I start in the middle of the period? Why didn't I start at the bottom? Okay, at the bottom, there's communicating with one another about your prayer. There's actually praying together. There's communicating about what you're reading in the Bible. There's communicating your heart. There's communicating your thoughts. There's communicating your values. Being great friends is where we usually start as the foundation of a great marriage. That's communicating selfless love to one another, in imparting security, giving encouragement, giving great esteem, building companionship with one another, having and sharing a common outlook. You could come up with other words. You see how this is working. And then in terms of being great lovers, there's sex, intimacy, the exclusivity of those aspects of the relationship. There's captivation, alternately translated intoxication in the book of Proverbs, of a husband for his wife and wife for her husband. And then there's just deep understanding one of another. So all these represent a sort of a roadmap, if you will, of what do we need to work on communication in? These are all topics. These are aspects of a great Christian marriage that you might have to grow in communication over. Mm-hmm. Because in fact, to grow in all these areas, it all begins with communication. Growing in your marriage means growing in these areas, And that all begins with communication. Communication is not in one layer or another layer. It is a spine which energizes and activates the growth in all 4 of these layers. So we're going to put some verses out here, some very critical verses. These are perhaps the 2 most critical communication verses we would see in the scriptures. Susan?
Okay. Well, yes, these are the most, boy, if good communication could be summed up with 2 verses, these are them. But, okay, so Ephesians 4:29, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. And you know, when I first became a Christian, unwholesome talk to me was cussing. Okay, I've got to stop cussing. But, you know, being married and having children and, you know, going through my life, I've realized that is the shallowest view of unwholesome talk there is. But unwholesome talk is all about did I consider what I was saying to someone? Did I think about what I was putting out there? Is it going to benefit them? Mm-hmm. And, you know, getting something off my chest to meet my needs might be unwholesome. And what I say, it needs to be well thought out. It needs to take in who's going to hear me. Is that going to meet their needs? And if you have children and they're in the room and they may be, you know, they may be watching TV in the next room, but their little ears, you know, how are they going to react to this? So taking all that in, that's what Ephesians 4:29 means. And you may think, I can't talk anymore then, but you know, over time, training ourselves to think, you know, is this going to be helpful? Will this encourage my husband or my spouse? And the second verse, James 1:19 through 20, my dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. You know, sometimes we think that the fact that it's true makes it okay to say.
Uh-oh.
You know, but if it is said in irritation or frustration or anger or selfishness or pride, you know, even the truth can do more harm than good. And, you know, James really lays out these 3 things that we need to think about as part of our communication, with being quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. And, you know, the rationale is we want to bring about the desired outcome that God and we desire. And if we go at it the wrong way, it's not going to produce the righteousness that God wants us to have.
Here's a conceptualized view of what communication is, or verbal communication, okay? What is communication? You have in your mind a thought. And maybe that thought is sort of more of a feeling, or an attitude, or a perspective, or a value, right? Or a dream. But you've got a thought, whatever kind of thought it is. You've got a thought in your mind. And there are different ways that communication can go wrong, because the goal is to take the thought in my mind, encode it in words. Hopefully those words travel unimpeded, without noise or distraction or any other thing that may be beyond either of our control. And then she will perceive it, interpret it, and create in her mind a representation of the thought I had in my mind, which makes us closer. And so here we've got an example. This fine young man has in his mind, I love you, babe. And he then encodes that in words. He says, I love you. She hears it correctly, interprets it correctly, and she thinks to herself, he loves me. Okay, that was a successful communication. That was a successful communication. But you know, there are many ways that verbal communications can go wrong. So suppose the husband, okay, and this is just an example, has in his mind, wow, I've worked so hard all day, and I skipped lunch, worked right through lunch. I'm hungry. And then he encodes it as, when's dinner? And she maybe had a bad day, maybe, was struggling with this and that. What she hears is, he is demanding. Okay, so this is an image of what would not be considered successful communication.
Right.
But you see what we're doing here. We're just trying to give you a picture. What would be hopefully the case is that husband and wife would increasingly over time share many of the same thoughts. I loved what was shared last night, just about becoming so in touch with your spouse that you know what they're thinking, you know what they're feeling, you know what values they have. And so this is what we want to be able to do. And by the way, if bad communication happens, like I come in and say, wow, I'm hungry. And what I'm thinking in my mind is, she always cooks a great dinner, and I'm so looking forward to this and spending time with her. And it didn't come across, and she looks at me cross and answers me back. Whoa. What do I need to do? Jump on her for misinterpreting me? No. Hey, maybe don't blame or doubt each other. We apologize. We reaffirm our, oh, I'm sorry, baby. That came across wrong. You know I love you so much, and I appreciate everything you do to make dinners and everything. You do a great job. I worked hard all day, and I'm really looking forward to dinner with you. I was just wondering when it is. Okay? So we're going to reaffirm. We're going to try again. And you know what? A lot of you have been going at this for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So there's been a lot of trying again. Am I right? Don't ever give up. Don't ever give up. Keep apologizing, reaffirming your love for each other, and trying again. Okay, so here's where we're just going to tell you 8 quick stories. Each one of these we have to communicate in about a minute or 2. Okay? 8 quick stories just to give you a taste of things that we've experienced in our lives that were communication challenges. And then what we're going to get to is the workshop slide where you're going to get a chance to talk with your spouse and talk about, hey, what are the things we need to work on in our communication? All right. So we've got 8 things. We're each gonna chime in on each one of them, but one of us will kick off each one. So one of the things that is super, super important in marriage. Remember, the foundation was being great friends. The foundation of marriage is being great friends. And that's in the three-layer version of the pyramid. And Susan and I have done really good over 32 years of building up one another's esteem. I love you. I like you. You're amazing. We're a good team.
Yeah.
And so even when one of us falls down, we communicate, we're a good team. Don't worry about if you messed up and I bailed you out, that's cool, no problem. We're a good team. Yeah. The success of the pair of us is more important than the success of either one of us. We're a good team. So there's no competition. There's no criticism, no cutting remarks. In 32 years, I have never made a critical comment about her body. and weight loss comes up as a topic. You got to navigate that. Never give a negative comment. Right? Not in 32 years. She knows that she is the perfect woman for me. And that I love what she's got. All right? So esteem, super important. You want to add anything there?
No.
Why don't you talk about the next one?
Okay, all right. Okay, so another thing that we have really tried to communicate on is just sharing our quiet times and nightly prayers. And you know, my quiet times, that's like the most intimate thing about me. That's when I talk to God about what I'm really feeling, and I look at verses that help me change or help me go deeper in my thoughts. And so if I want communication with him, I'm going to be sharing those things. That I want that intimacy with him. So, but then sometimes that's a challenge. And you know, a lot of times when we talk, we'll be doing it in the morning, like when we're getting dressed. We're often in the bathroom at the same time. That's a great time to share things, and so we'll talk about that. And sometimes he's like, oh, I'm listening to this podcast. Can we listen to it together while we're getting ready or whatever? And then another thing that we've done is we try to pray together every single night. Mm-hmm. Now, you know, sometimes one of us might be staying up later than the other. And the person staying up later may come to the bedroom with the other and just say a prayer, almost like tucking them in. Mm-hmm. And then they can go back and do what they need to do. And you know, there have been many nights where I am so tired that my prayer is, God, I can't even think, but I know I love you. I love my husband. Good night. I mean, that has been my prayer. But it's still, we prayed together, and we connected spiritually together before we went to sleep. Let's see, is that about it?
Let me just add that praying together is such an important means or avenue of communicating with each other.
Yeah.
Right? She communicates so much with me while she's talking to her Heavenly Father. Mm-hmm. And I'm there in her arms, you know, at night, and we're praying together. And I communicate a great deal to her, not by telling her what I'm feeling, but by talking to God about what I'm feeling, and she hears me, and I'm sharing that with her. Yeah. So sharing our nightly prayer and just sharing what we're thinking about, what we're growing in, what we're working on, what we want to study together, or what we want to study individually, all those things are super important in communicating about the foundation beneath the foundation, right? And being able to prepare for all the other things that we much more pragmatically have to communicate about.
Right. Okay, backseat driving.
Okay, so backseat driving. Backseat driving is the most
enduring.
It was the first big conflict and the most enduring conflict that we have.
On the way to the marriage retreat last night. Yeah.
Okay, but those conflicts become lighter and briefer, and we resolve them quicker, and in general we've made tremendous progress. But you know, the fact is that I'm a decent driver, okay? I promise. But when I get in a car with my wife and I start talking, I do lose some of that expertise in driving. Okay, I miss my turns. I'm not quite paying attention to what's going on because, in fact, one of the ways she had of describing it, she said, "It's okay, honey, you're thinking about higher math." Okay? I'm a very philosophical, analytical thinker, and I'm often thinking about higher math.
Yeah.
So while I'm trying to talk about this or that, I do tend to miss my way or not pay attention to the fact that I'm coming up on our turn. So that has provided, by virtue of my characteristic weaknesses, lots of opportunities for us to work on this. Right. And, how can she express confidence and relax and be a patient and confident rider or passenger while I'm busy talking about all this stuff and missing my turn. Okay, so one of the things that really helped us was for me to be patiently consider all the times where she gave me feedback and I was in the wrong sometimes and not in the wrong at others. I said, you know what would really help me? What would really help me is if you said something that expressed confidence in my driving, even if you're double checking on me. So something like this. So I would give her the words to say. Could you say something like, hey, Steve, you've got your bearings, right? See, that's positive. You've got your bearings, right? Not like, now you know you should get over into that other lane, and you know we're going to turn right. See, those things express a lack of confidence. So I said, if you could just say, you've got your bearings, right? And I would say, yeah, I got my bearings. I'm good. Thank you.
So I know,
I really
as
appreciate
soon as
that.
we pass Old Canton Road, before the turn for Lower Roswell comes up, if he's not in the right lane, I'll just say, you've got your bearings, right?
Yeah, that's right. and that's really worked for us.
Yeah.
And in fact, I gave her the words that I could understand and hear,
Yeah.
and she has used them frequently.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, you're up.
Okay, so extended family. You know, there's a lot of needs that can be in family, and I really appreciated just that we are one. So his family is my family, and my family is his family. You know, my brother just died this week, and we were up in South Carolina, and it was myself, my nephew, my husband, and me. We all went together to the minister, to the funeral home. We did it all together because he's with us. Steve wrote the obituary. You know, he just stepped in there when there's a need. And I've gone to see his sisters without him because I love them and we have a good time together. So just supporting each other with your extended family, and our spouse needs us when there are needs in the family. And your kids, if you have children, your kids need to see you working together as a team to take care of the family. So,
Yeah, that's awesome.
okay.
The biggest conflict, the most inscrutable, difficult to understand, how did that happen? Conflict of our married life was over the kids' schooling. Okay? There came a point where my son, our middle child, wasn't doing well in his first year in middle school. And he needed a change of schooling opportunities. And so we were evaluating both homeschooling and private schooling. Okay? And so for 6 months, we were talking about it. We were trying to figure out, okay, how do we find out about private schools? We don't know anything about private schools. How do we know where to visit? How do we know what would be a good place to go? What about homeschool programs? How do we find out curriculums?
Yeah.
And you know what? Susan's not really a homeschool mom. You know, there are homeschool moms and there are not homeschool moms.
I'm not.
She's not a homeschool mom. So we had to so we were searching for things that could be self-paced and sort of self-administered for our child to get online, and online options and so forth. And it came down to the point where we had visited a couple of private schools, we had looked at a bunch of homeschooling options, and it was the night before we had to say yes or no to an admission, to a private school. And she was thinking,
We're doing private school, right? Yeah, because I can't do homeschooling, right?
and I said, what?
6 months we've been talking about this.
No. And how could she think that? Was she not listening to me all this time?
Really not.
Thought bubble, communicate into words, interpret, wasn't happening.
Was not.
And this was a real test for me because I literally was wrestling with, is she being dishonest with me right now?
Yeah.
I mean, I made this so clear that we would, and the issue was, anyway, I need to be brief, but I made it so clear that if our son wanted to do homeschooling, then he needed to do homeschooling. Or
Clear as mud to me. Yeah.
yeah. And the fact is, 1 year later, it hadn't worked out, so he went into private school. Okay, but the fact was that we had a challenge,
Yeah.
and the devil wanted to get a foothold. She is intentionally, what's she doing? How could she possibly not understand what I said a bunch of times? Is she trying to, she's not the manipulative type, but what's going on here? The devil has his schemes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he wants to get into our miscommunications. And I just had to look at this dear, sweet, unbelievably lovely, wonderful woman I was married to and say, there's no way she was intentionally trying to mess with me. And I couldn't figure out how it had happened, but I just had to say, you know what? It was a miscommunication.
Yeah.
And we've got to apologize, reaffirm our love for one another,
Yeah.
and try again.
Yeah. Yeah. And just learning that, yeah, you can miscommunicate, and it's not intentional, but it can happen. Okay. Weekly planning and scheduling is so important to me. I feel out of control. I feel like I don't know what's coming at me. If Steve and I don't sit down, and we usually try to do it on Sundays, and the pyramid that we started with, it's almost like we run through our life with that. Like, ministry-wise, like, who do we want to have over? What, I'd love to catch up with them, or they've had a bump. Can we follow up with them? Or, just we plan that time. And I think because of that, we've been able to connect with people, help people. We felt like we always put God first. Our children can see that. Okay, wait a minute. This kid has a game on this day. Does that mean you're going to go to the game with him and I'm going to go to midweek? Or no, we're going to tell them we can't go to the game because we have a church commitment. We made that very clear at the beginning of the season. However you manage, but we can head off those things rather than Wednesday night at 5 o'clock saying, what do you mean you're taking, how are we going to handle this? So weekly planning and scheduling, and then that allows us time to also during that scheduling time, like, I've noticed this needs in our children. Do you think you could take this one out for some extra time? Or how did your extra time with them go last week if we haven't had a chance? But that's scheduling time. And sometimes it can be, it'll be a good hour. And sometimes it can go longer. And sometimes we do the abbreviated one, like, okay, what do we got going on next week? And we can knock it out in 10 minutes. But that has just...
But most of the time it's an hour plus.
Yeah. But just with that, all the things, particularly on that partner's level of the marriage pyramid, that's where I notice like the most conflicts can happen. And if we set aside to talk through that, like, I'm feeling insecure with our finances. Can we really double down? I think, look at these and make sure we feel like we're on a good track, or, we've got this coming up. How are we going to meet this? Having that time to talk through those things, I think helped us to avoid a lot of those conflicts that can come in that partnership area.
And in fact, she was talking about needing to do scheduling. That was creating a lot of insecurity in her.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't confident that I knew all of the family commitments that were coming up and all the things that were on her schedule. She wanted to make sure were on my radar screen, on my schedule. And so that was actually, it came out of that marriage class,
Yeah.
that this was a big need that we weren't covering appropriately, covering properly. And so we put into place this weekly Sunday afternoon scheduling time that we've done for, 10, 15 years since.
Yeah. And sometimes it's dipped and sometimes it's been stronger, but we've always gone back to it. We know we need it.
So let me just touch on these next two. It's super important just to have your daily communication habits in place. We've found at times that in the evenings, she goes here and does her thing, and I go here and do my thing, and then we meet up again and head to bed. Okay? And when we realize, we're getting a little out of touch with each other.
Yeah.
We need to spend the last half hour or hour of the evening doing things together. And sometimes that's cleaning up the kitchen together, or sometimes it's working on something that we need to do together. And we find that just a daily communication habit is critical. We also like to communicate in the morning when we're getting up and getting ready in the bathroom. We like to communicate in the evening when we're getting ready for bed in the bathroom. I mean, that's just a sort of a daily...
Spend a lot of time in the bathroom.
Well, I mean, it happens, morning and night.
Yeah.
It's a common place where we both need to be.
Yeah.
So anyway, we find that it's super important just to have this daily communication habit, and people that we talk to, sometimes it just evades them. That they don't have those habits, and they wonder why they're not on the same sheet of music. And then sex. Now, sex is not simple. You'd think it would be simple, right? The movies and TV portray it as simple. But sex is not simple. And sex involves a lot of things going on in my mind and a lot of things going on in her mind. And you know what? Also, to go from marriage to 40 years on, or 50, 30, wherever you are, things change.
Yeah.
Right? Not only did she go through pregnancy, she went through menopause. I went through, and sometime later, I went through some, male changes of life where things don't operate quite as consistently as before. And the fact is that things change. Things change in our mind. Things change in our bodies. Mm-hmm. And communicating about those is not easy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you experience that. Maybe it's totally easy for you. That's great. Anyway, I don't want to make a misstep, right? If I say something insensitive or inappropriate, that could stay as like a lodged negative thing. And so I got to be careful. But I want to be candid. So it's important to share your own heart, your own thoughts. It's important to be interested in the other person's heart, the other person's thoughts. Right. Not to accuse, not to turn it into something negative, turn it into an opportunity for growth.
Yeah.
But let's just say it continues as an ongoing, important topic of communication growth for us to this day. So, what we're going to transition to now, this is just like a laundry list of things that you might want to communicate, talk to each other right now about. Okay, what we're going to do is just you and your spouse for 7 minutes, talk about, what are your values? The rhythms, as I put it down here, both depth and frequency. What are your patterns, both positive and negative, in communicating with each other? So it's all the details on the slide in your handout or your digital version. What about all these topics that we have to communicate about? Which one should we work on? Which one are we behind in communicating about? So what I'm going to do is give you 6 minutes now to just identify 2 or 3 things that you want to continue, that you want to talk about.